All right, so we're going to continue Hilchos Mikvaot Siman Reish Aleph, and we're holding Sif Nen, and I think we'll be able to go up until Sif Nun Hey. These are relatively easy seifim, even though in reality the Metzias it's not so simple. Nonetheless, it's not as complicated. We've been speaking a little bit about Hamshocha, and Hamshocha, in a way, transforms water that is she'uvim into mayim that can be used in the mikveh. You can look at it, Hamshocha, also as a way of connecting. The reason I'm saying connecting is because the last sif we did was Hamshocha directly from a mayon and a mikveh, even if it's alidei dovra mekabel tuma. And we know that dovra mekabel tuma can be a problem with haviyosoi, how the mikveh is formed. So ideally, obviously you don't want anything that is mekabel tuma involved. But there are times when, even if something would be mekabel tuma, it may not be an issue. And that is when you are connecting directly from a mayon or another mikveh. So it's not that you're being mamshech the water, the meigashomim in itself, where it has to be in the ground and in a certain distance, certain conditions for the hamshocha to be effective. The last sif was more about connecting. When you're connecting from another kosher mikveh, you're connecting directly to a mayon, then the Mechaber said, in the first opinion, that afilu alidei dovra mekabel tuma kosher. Why? The chashvina lezeh mikveh, he says, shemamshich hamayim letor kilu mechuber lemayon or lemikveh. Because we look at it as though they are connected. And connected is a whole different idea. In other words, it's really part and parcel of the same thing. There are, of course, opinions who are not mechalek, and that's the Rashba, he brought down the Beis Yosef, and that he holds that they were not matir in the Mishnah to be mamshich by using metal, for example, unless that siloin, that tube, is mechuber bekarka, because once it's mechuber bekarka, we explained it, it's botel agaf karka, so it becomes part of the ground, so it's not a problem what it's made of really when you're doing hamshocha. You cannot obviously use a kli kibul. A kli kibul would render the waters she'uvim, but other than that, hamshocha is definitely something that can be used to transport waters from involving great distance, especially. The next seifim, however, deal with mikvois, real mikvois, that are connected to each other. And we spoke a little bit about connections in the past, the size of keshvoferes anoit, like 2 fingers, the diameter of 2 fingers, in being able to connect 2 bodies of water, or 2 boiras, if you want to look at it that way, and that will be very helpful. It could be helpful because you don't want to immerse always in the same mikveh, in the same bor. Otherwise, after a while it does get dirty, even with a filter, and you don't always have fresh rainwater. So you want to be able to have ideally 2 boiras, one for the meigashomim and one for faucet water, and somehow you will connect the 2. And there are various ways of doing that, which we'll perhaps discuss another time, the various shitas. But there's no doubt about it that if there's a connection being made between the boiras, that connection can help us that in a sense that whatever waters we have in one mikveh are really part of the waters next door, in the adjacent mikveh. So if you don't have enough in one mikveh, or if you have enough perhaps, but it's she'uvin, but it's connected to the other mikveh, which is 100% kosher, then it's connected. So that's going to be a big help. So the problem, however, arises sometimes in mikvois. You can have problems. In other words, even though they were built properly and they are connected, the hole between them can get clogged, And another problem that may occur that has nothing necessarily to do with connection of mikvahs is that even a mikveh in itself that was built solid, and it's a kosher mikveh in every respect, can have cracks. And those cracks can lead to a problem of zoichalin. Now we know by now that a mikveh is not metar bezoichalin. Zoichalin means running water. The water is running like in a mayan. It's moving. There's a current. That is good for a mayan. That is actually very good for a mayan. But it doesn't help us by a mikveh. A mikveh has to be bashboiren, as the term is used. It has to be sitting water. It has to be a pool of sitting water, not moving water. The ocean, we said, was a little bit different, was an exception to this. But otherwise, a mikveh cannot have water running through it. Well, there can be a situation where, as a result of cracks, the waters percolate to the ground. Or, if they don't percolate to the ground, they come out. They can come out from the top by overflowing. They can come out from the sides through broken tiles and the like, if it's not sealed well. And when you have too much coming out, you run the risk, of course, of losing your 40 cell. But even if you still have a remaining 40 cell or more, you still will have the possibility of zoichalin. So that's something that we're going to discuss now. The waters are coming out, depending at what pace they're coming out. They could present a problem with zoichalin. So, Seif Nun, mikveh shel mei geshomim. So you have a mikveh of rainwater. What does that come to exclude? To exclude a mayon, a spring. A mikveh shel mei geshomim. Shenifratz echot mekoslov, that one of the walls got broken. Ve'hamayim yotzim derech hasedek, and the waters are coming out through the crack. Okay. Im yisharu bo mem seo achar sheyotzu ktsoson, if after some of the waters have come out, there will be enough to make the mikveh kosher mikveh, which means 40 seo. Im yisharu bo mem seo achar sheyotzu ktsoson. One second here. She'ad sadek, in other words, if the waters came out and you will have enough 40 seo up until the crack, kosher. V'imlav posul mishum dehavele zoichlin ve'nikve metar bezoichlin. In other words, if it doesn't appear to be that way. In other words, if there's not going to be enough water after the waters have come out. In other words, if some of the waters have come out, but you still have some remaining, and the remaining is a kosher mikveh, that's fine. But if it's not, if it's continuously coming out, it's posul mishum dehavele zoichlin. Ve'im mikveh metar bezoichlin. A mikveh cannot be metar if the water is continuously coming out, leaking. V'yesh machmirin, there are shitas who are machmir, afilu misharu mem seo ad hasedek, even if you do have 40 seo until the crack. In other words, you still have it. You still have the required minimum amount. They're machmir because the waters are coming out, the waters are moving. It's zoichalin. The Rama says one should be concerned with that shita. Lister masedek, definitely to go ahead and seal the crack. The Rama continues, obviously we're talking about a mikveh that is not coming directly from a mayan. It's not connected to a mayan. If it is coming from a mayan, so then you don't have to be concerned with the continuous zechila, because it's coming from a mayan. It's just emptying out into a mikveh. So this yetzias hamayim, this water that is leaking out or coming out, ein yetzias hamayim koru zoichlin, this water is coming out of the mikveh is not called zoichlin, unless ela kishe'ein choizer in the mikveh. He continues on to say that this Yetzias Hamayim is only Kol Zachlin when they don't come back to the mikveh. But somehow if they do come out and they return to the same mikveh, that's not called Zechila. Somehow it could happen that the waters seep out, but they are not lost. They somehow come back. That's not called Zeichlin. Zeichlin means that they seep out and they're gone. So there's always a concern, of course, that you may have less than the required amount. But here he says, the Rambam says that those who are machmir, that even if you have the required amount, so long as it's seeping out, go ahead and be machmir and therefore seal any cracks. Not because of the loss of water so much, but because of the problem of zeichlin. In a mikveh, zeichlin is not mitar. So that's a very important detail in the construction of a mikveh, that it should be, I guess you can say, waterproof. In other words, it should be sealed well. Now, what about sealing? What kind of sealing can you use? In bal listom, if you're going to seal the sedek, the crack, so that in order for it to be 40 cell, in order for 40 cell to remain in the mikveh, you want to make sure that lo yistom oiso biyadoy velo bechol davar mekabel. You don't want to seal it with your hand or with anything that is mekabel tumo. Ideally, it's a seal. Yeah, but there are some who are lenient because you're not bringing the water through davar mekabel tumo. All it is a seal, which will prevent any waters from coming out. There are those who are matir. Yesh mishematir listo bechol davar shemekabel tuma. There are those who say it's perfectly okay, because all you're doing, this is the shittas Aruch, is holding back the water from coming out. You're not bringing the waters in. So that's a big difference, and this may not be so much of an issue because how are people most of the time going to seal a crack? Usually not going to be with the davar mekabel tuba, but nonetheless it's important to know that if you can avoid that, it's much better. Sif Nun Aleph. What if you have a situation where nikava mikva meimov noitfim me'at me'at? You don't have water streaming out because of a crack, but you have it seeping out, and the seepage is happening very slowly. There's a hole, nikva mikveh, there's a hole somewhere, and the waters of the mikveh are noitfim, are dripping. Me'at me'at, little by little. Or nivloim bekarka. With time, what is noticeable is that the waters are being absorbed into the ground, into the cement or whatever. And it's happening me'at me'at, it's not noticeable. That's the key over here, it's not noticeable. Kosher. Why? Mechaber says clearly, because they're not noticeable. Lefi she'ein zechilos nikeres, even though that's a zechila, but a zechila she'ein nikeres, if you cannot detect it, you don't really notice it right away, because math, it's over time, that's not called zechila. So, technically it is. It's seeping out. The waters are coming out. There's a hole somewhere. But it's happening me'at me'at. It's not nikeres. If it's not nikeres, then we don't have to worry about. I think, obviously, these kind of situations, you don't want to lose the waters, you want to seal it, but at least you can be toivel in it. If you haven't gotten around to fixing it, that's important to know.
About a 40 saw.
Yes, you want to make sure that there's the required amount.
What is the shear zman where you say it is or it is not nikeres? After a while it'll be nikeres, right? But after a while you'll notice, hey.
As you look at it,
water.
Right. As you look at it, as you look down at the mikveh, you don't see the water.
So it has to be less than 18 frames per second?
Yeah. It's not noticeable. You can't actually detect it with the naked eye, that the water is actually seeping out. You can see it coming out, and that's a big enough crack, probably, and that's called zoichalin. If you don't see that happening, it's not zoichalin. All right.
So really, that's a pretty large hole that you would see happening.
Oh, sure. If you actually can see it, it must be a big crack. Sure. That's correct. That leads us to Sif Nun Beis. Here, what we're going to do is we're going to intentionally make a hole. Here we want to connect mikvaos, and they have to be a big size, a certain size, where they're considered connected. But it all depends for what. Sometimes the hole doesn't have to be that big. So Sif Nun Beis reads as follows: Abau le'arev mikve posul o choser, a mikve kosher, lech shiroi. You're coming to join, to mix a mikve that is posul. Now here we're talking about a psul midoraisa. So we're going to see there's a difference between something that is posul midoraisa or something that is posul midorabanan. What's a posul midorabanan? She'uvim. Ma'im she'uvim we hold is a psul midorabanan. So abole orev mikve posul or choser. In other words, there's not enough, and you want to combine it. You want to join it with a mikve kosher, so that it should be kosher. So that these waters that are either posul or are missing the required amount should be made kosher. Or sheshneim chaserim, or the two of them do not have the required 40 each on their own. Ubole arvom, and you want to join them lech shino, so they should be kosher. Between the two, you'll have it. You can do so. Tzorich sheyeh nekev shebineim rochav keshvoferet hanod. Then the hole between them has to be big. It has to be as big as a shvoferes hanod. That's what you say is like 2 fingers. And not to forget,
about an inch, about an inch.
A little more, more. Mm-hmm.
More over an inch.
Yeah, more. The kiluach hamayim.
But less than 1.5 inches, or about 1.5.
Yeah, there's different shittas about that. 2 fingers. Yeah.
No, different people have different fingers.
Different sizes fingers,
yeah,
right?
Especially different ages.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And but another important detail here is it's not enough that the hole be big as shvoferes. It also has to be that the kiluach hamayim he brings down here, the stream of water, yeh kerochav hanekev, that the waters that are coming through also has to be streaming through the entire hole. They have to. In other words, it's not enough that the hole is that big. It's that the waters are coming through the entire width of the nekev. Now, now once you've accomplished that, once you've made the connection, the proper size connection, and you've combined the psul with the kosher, afilu rega, even for a moment, nishar le'olam bechshero. Very interesting idea here. Once you've made the connection, you closed it, that's fine, because once the connection was made even for a moment, nishar le'olam bechshero, it will continue to remain kosher, even though they're not open right now to each other. The Shach brings down like this: Rabbi Yerucham Kosov shenistapko meforshim. It's in Suffolk, amongst the meforshim. Im nishar hashov be'echshero. If the shov remains be'echshero, or kivan shenistam hanekev, or since the hole is sealed, choyzer lepsul, kibetchiloi, it goes back to its original psul. Yosef brings it down. Toiv lehachmer lechatchila, he says. Okay, there are those who are going to be machmer. But the way that Mechaber paskins here is that once the connection is made, nishar le'olam be'echshero. Afilu nistam anekev achar kach. Even if later on, for example, what could happen? You did not necessarily close it, but it could happen nistam anekev. It could be that hole with time got closed up, got clogged. Kol sheyamod keshvoferet anod mimatoi. And anything that will take the place of the shoferes anod, in other words, anything that will stand in that hole, can reduce that shoferes anod. In other words, you need the shoferes anod, but if you have stuff in that shoferes anod, in that hole, and it takes up the entire diameter of the hole, it's mema'atoi. It will decrease the size. And in this case, we're going to be machmer afilu dova shu mibirya samayim, even something that is grown or lives in the water, but it's not just that lives in the water. We spoke about Bir Samayim means creatures that are formed in the water, which are not really a problem. We covered that in the past, in being toivel in them. But here, in enabling the two mikvoos to connect, you don't want anything in that hole blocking it that will reduce the size. Because anything that will be there will reduce it. Therefore, if you ever have a suffix, if you have any doubts whether that nekev was big enough, imlav, it's possible. So you want to make sure that you have a good size hole. Now, the Taz brings down, when we said nishar le'olam bechshero, once it's closed. Obviously, the Taz says ein bechlal zeh, what's not included in this, im hoyo choser, if it was choser, right? V'chshiroi, and you made it kosher. Why? How? Right? You connected it to another mikveh that does have 40 so. But wait a minute. Once that hole is sealed, v'nista maneke, well, pshita the puzzle, kivan she'achshav ein bo shir. If you're enabling this mikveh that is choser, not that it's puzzle, and it has the right amount, but it's choser, to become one with the mikveh that does have the required amount, and you close the nekev, well, obviously it's going to go back to being puzzle once you close the nekev, because it doesn't have its own 40 cell. The fact that it doesn't have the right amount, it can still be kosher if it's connected to a mikveh with a shoferes anoid that has the required amount. But if you close that nekev and this mikveh does not have the amount, well, it's no longer connected. So when did we say that closing the nekev will be all right? If what you did was make the mikveh that was puzzle kosher. But it had the right amount, and it still does. If it doesn't have it, then of course it's not going to be kosher. All right, so that was as far as a nekev, a hole that is the size of shoferes anoid. Now, what happens if you don't have one big hole like that, but somehow, for whatever reason, they made it like that? Im yesh nekovim dakim. If you have many little holes, not one big hole, but many little holes, between all of them, then obviously if they all together total the size of shoferes anod, that's fine. As long as one of them is sholem and the next one is choser. So you can combine the two and render the one that's choser kosher. The Ramah brings down something that could be very useful in certain situations. You want to build a mikveh quickly. You don't have the rainwater, but you want to build it next to a river. Because next to a river, there's a chance that some of the waters will come in from the river. So he says, mutar lach for mikveh betzad hanahar, on the side of a river, velitboil bo. Afal pi she'ein bo mem sa'ah. Even though at one time, at any given time, there may not be yet 40 sa'ah. Why? The waters percolate under the ground. Since it's close to a river, and we can see we can see the waters coming in, percolating in. Shamayim boim min nahar derech achilchul. Dehainu min akovim ducking through small little holes, like small little holes shebekarka. That's called a chibur. That would be a connection. And this, the Shach says, doesn't have to be a nahar. It could be oy etzela mikveh sholem. If it's next to a mikveh that is sholem, that we can see the chilchul. So that would be another way of connecting. In other words, you have various small holes, even though I think the best way to do it would be with a regular hole that is Kishoferes Anod, but it will work. It is possible as long as they all add up to a Shoferes Anod. And then he adds, Vehu adin im chilek mikve besal or besak. If you somehow divided the mikveh with a sal or a sack, a basket, im ein shir mikveh betzad echad posel. If there's not a shir mikveh in one side, it's posel.
The whole thing, or the side where there's shir missing?
Wherever it's missing, yeah. Mm-hmm. Actually, I skipped. Right, so the Ramah says you can make that mikveh close to the river. Avalim shneim chaserim, but if the two of them are missing, not that one of them is sholem and the other one is chaser, because that's the requirement when you have many nekovim dakim. The one be sholem, the other one be chaser, even if the other one is chaser, that's fine. Even though all you have is small holes, but together they're mitzarfin. Avalim shneim chaserim, but if the two of them are chaserim, Eina nekovim adakim, the small the holes are not mitzarfin l'shoferes anod. So this small nekovim does have some strings attached. If you have small holes, one of the mikvois has to be kosher, has to have the required amount.
Both of them are.
Then the fact that they're connected makes the one that's chaser kosher as well. Because we said before, you can't do that. You can't have a mikveh that is chaser next to another mikveh that is chaser. Between the two of them you have shoferes anod. Between the two of them you will have the right amount. That's fine. They are connected. But here, it's not going to be acceptable.
Because the holes are
too small. That's not called a connection if the two of them are chaserim. But if one of them is sholem and the other one is chaser, then you can have nekovim dakim that will constitute enough of a chibur if between all of them they're mistar from the shoferes.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, sure.
What's the logic behind it?
It's all taken from the Mishnah.
So it's just exeris of katu?
No, that's how that's the way they learn the dynamics of
because really, why should it make a difference whether one side is shalom or not, with respect to the effect that the little holes have on the other side that is chaser?
Yeah. Remember, the shoferes anod is the required amount ordinarily, right? So the question is, should we be lenient with the small little holes? Small little holes is not a real chibur, except that they all add up together to a shoferes anod. So that's a question. It's a good question, and that they did not allow, as far as using the heter of converting or transforming the posel or the chaser into a kosher mikveh, unless the other one is.
So really, the holes are not changing; they remain the exact same.
Yes.
So what is changing is the water that is seeping through the holes. The water that's coming from the shalom through the holes into the chaser. Apparently, that water has a different quality because it's coming from a hole that has sufficient amount.
Yes.
So the water coming from the shalom, one could maybe argue that the water coming from the side with the sufficient amount, the insufficient size of the holes does not prevent it from being considered still connected to its origin, to its source.
Because they're small.
And therefore it retains its ability to elevate the missing side to a fully kosher mikveh.
Yeah. Yes.
Maybe that's why.
Yes, you can say that. Yeah. One is a shoferes anod that they deemed sufficient, big enough for them to be considered as though they're one.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you have both sides of chaser, then it has to actually be one.
Yes.
So that it adds up. Here we don't need it to add up. Here we only have to retain the.
No, we would like it to. We would like it.
But we don't need to, because once one side is already full, since one side has the right measure, we only need to retain the ability of water that is originates in that size, to retain its connection to that side, so that now it affects the water that is not full, because now the water from the full side is going into the water that's not full.
Right.
So now the water that's not full changes its nature because it's connected through the water that's in there, not through the holes. Thus, the holes are not the holes are not where the two waters connect. We have water from a small one and water from a large one.
Yes.
The holes is not the connecting point between the two. The connecting point is where the water from the large one actually enters into the small one. So in the small one, you have part of it is the small water and part of it is kosher water coming from the large one.
Right.
So that's where they're connecting.
Yes.
How would these little holes be a problem? This perforation, how would it be a problem if it prevented from the water coming from the large one from still being considered part of the water of the large one?
Yes.
So here the perforation would be causing a different problem in the first case. In the first case, they would be preventing the two sides from adding up. Here, they would be preventing water that's split from the large one to still be considered part of that large one. So that's a different problem. So that they weren't going to. Maybe.
Yeah, you can look at it that way, yeah, sure. So that's what he says. If the two of them are chaserim, the small nikovim are not going to be mitzarech to make it a shofer sanoid.
Right.
On that he adds, on that he adds, chilek mikve besar lo besak, mean shir mikve b'tzad echad, it's possible. By splitting the two, if one does not have a shir mikve, it's possible. All right. Sif nun gimel, habo lehachshir mikve shov, mi mikve sholem. Now we're dealing with a situation where the mikveh is not chaser, but it's a mikveh shov.
So again, that was water that was carried?
Water, yeah, maim shuvim, from a faucet, carry. Now mikveh shov is a little bit more lenient. Abol hachshir mikveh shov, mi mikveh sholem, she'eno shov, and you want to be makshir from a mikveh sholem that is not shov. Afal pi she'eno mashiko, elo kesaro, kosher. Even though the hashoko, remember, is the connection, the connecting of two bodies of water, two boiras, through some hole, through some connection. It's not hamshocha. Hashoko, you know, was you have a hole, so one is meshik, it's like a kiss, the other, and they connect. So you want to be machshir the mikveh shov, like we do today in many mikvahs. You want to use hashoko to be machshir the waters that are she'uvim. Even though the hashaka will only be like a crack. Kosher. But even though it's happening underwater, it's not happening above water, that's okay. So kechut asar, that's very interesting. This is different. So the Ramah adds, you know why? V'dafka b'psul she'iva. This was said, this requirement of only kesara is only said b'psul of she'iva, which is b'derabanan. How do you have a situation where it's b'derabanan? Not if the Taz says, not if the entire mikveh is she'uva. Pirush beroiv ha-mikveh kosher u'b'mi'utoi she'uv. Like the Ramah wrote in the very beginning. Those mikvahs Siv Gimel. So in that kind of a situation where the psul is at the Rabbanan, and in other words, as the Taz explained, roiv the mikveh of the mikveh is kosher. So all you need right now is a sara. A sara, a little bit of a crack, like a hair, would be sufficient to join the mikvahs together. And then he adds, even if this is happening under the water, not above the water, that you don't see it, it's still okay. So the Ramah continues, we said before, if it's a psul d'oraisa, then the dimensions, the requirement is a hole the size of shofer sanod in order to join the two mikvahs. Like we explained before. But filu b'psul she'iva, don't think everybody agrees. Even in a psul she'iva, yesh cholkin, the Tur and the Rosh, v'chen royu lehoyos, there are some that disagree. That say no. Regardless of the situation, you need shveferet sanoid. That's the size you need. And that's because they are the ones that hold before that Kula Shov is a Psul Doraisa. So the Shach explains the Fizeh. Like the Taz says, if the mikveh, most of the mikveh was kosher, like Kegon Shenoflu L'Toicho Gimel Lugim Maim Shiurim, Sagi Lekule Amu B'Kise'ara. Then, according to everybody, a se'ara would be sufficient to connect. Okay. And the Ramos says, V'chein roi lehoiros. That's the way we paskin. And that's the way we actually conduct ourselves. We don't. You're not going to see it smaller than Shofar Sanot. If anything, you're going to see it bigger. Sif Nun Daled. I think we'll just go to Nun Daled. Koiso sheben beis mikvois shenizdak. So let's say you have a wall between two mikvois that has a crack. Shenizdak mitzad ze letzad ze. From side to side. The crack is all the way through. I feel kosher, even if the crack is a minor crack. It all depends what kind of a crack it is. Now, here we're going to see it's not. We're not trying to combine. We have two mikvois, and you have a sedek crack. Now, the sedek, even if it's a small sedek, can happen in one or two ways, either vertically or horizontal crack. That's what the Mechaber calls sheti or erev. In other words, sheti ve'erev, in other words, as we would call it in English, cross, right? One going down, one going across, sheti ve'erev, right? There's a machlokes which one is which is a sheti and which is erev, and why what difference does it make?
In other words, which one is the horizontal, which one is the vertical?
Right.
It's the same thing like with the udder. You have to crisscross. You have to cut it crisscross and then squeeze out the middle.
With the what?
The udder of a cow. If you want to, Basar.
Oh, okay, yeah. Same words, same terms. So even if the sedek is kosher, lesheti, so the basic understanding of sheti is on the broad side, on the width. Mitztaref le'arev shnei hamikvois le'achshiro. So here, this crack, if necessary, that is, if it's on the sheti, could be mitztaref to make the two mikvois kosher. Ve'im la'arev, in other words, if it's vertically, let's say, Eino mitztarfim, they would not be mitztarf ad sheyeh b'mokom echad kishvo feres hanoid, until you have in one spot, in one area of that crack, it has to be in one place, kishvo feres hanoid, not all along. In one spot has to be kishvo feres hanoid. So it makes a difference on which way the crack is. Ve'im nifratz hakoisel lemala ze leze al rum keklipas hashum, but if the walls between the two of them got cracked, broken on the very, very top, and it's just the height of klipas hashum, just like the shell of a garlic, ve'al roichav, but the width of kishfor feres hanot, that's also kosher. So on the top, it would be sufficient, even though it was a little bit, the height was very, very little, but it still had the width of kishur feres hanot. Or even if there's no nifratz, the water simply go over, as the Shach says, "Uadin echad lo nifratz, el shamayim holchim mizel lezel lemala min hakoisel, ve'roim ha'avir." We see, and they see the air. In other words, they come out on the top. Boy keklipas hashum, you still would need at least keklipas hashum, that height. It's not enough that it's just moist. So even if the waters are just coming over the top, that's fine. You don't need to have a crack, but you would need to have at least klipas hashum, where the water is going over the wall. The Ramah says, if you had like a pile of dirt between the two mikvois, Im notal migoiva hagal me'at, if you took away a little bit of the gal, a little bit of the pile of mud, a little bit was removed, until you can see that the waters are coming over from one to the other, that amount of width, berum, in the height of klipas hashum, sagi, that would be sufficient. Why? Because the lobo inon kemolesh shoferet hanoid elo benekev. The size of shoferet hanoid is only a requirement when you have a hole. But if you don't have a hole and you have the waters coming over, or somehow they just go over the top of the wall, go over the top of the gal here, that would be sufficient. You would have, of course, you would have to have the width of shoferet hanoid. You'd have to have it going through that amount of space. But in this case, you don't need a hole. So that would be perfectly fine. That would be acceptable, because all we're trying to achieve here is to connect the two mikvois. And if there's continuous water going across, and it's going across kerum, the height of klipas hashum, the width of shoferet hanoid, then that's sufficient. So in the event, if this happens, that two mikvois are cracked somewhere, that crack may be a way of combining the two. It's not going to necessarily make one of them puzzle. The psul of waters coming out is another problem. That's the psul of zoichalin. Here, it's not really going to make a problem, because all that's going to happen is, if anything, the two mikvois are already, even if they're not already kosher, but they may be able to become kosher. We will consider that a sedek between them, if it's on the width, to be sufficient to combine the two, even if it's a little bit. Yishach brings down that Lemaise, the Bach wrote, because there's a machloikas of what's shetim va'ev, ein lahem echsher elam kin yesh nekev shoferet hanoid. We won't allow them to be kosher unless there's a real hole, k'shoferet hanoid b'mokom echad, ben bezu, in one or the other. What's the havamina here? The havamina, the Taz says, the whole idea here is because nifratz hakoisel, when the walls is broken, and you can see it. So the kivan shemegula lemala, since it's open, it's exposed on top, v'royes ha'avir, he says, and you can see, it sees the air. In other words, it's clear. In that kind of a case, ein tzorich k'shoferet hanoid. In other words, the waters are coming across. And so in that situation, a hole is not necessary. When do you need a shoferet hanoid? When you need to have a hole. When do you need to have a hole? Underneath, to connect the two bodies of water. In this kind of a situation, as long as you have a room of klipas hashum, and the waters travel the width of shoferet hanoid, that would be sufficient to connect the two mikvois. Okay.